Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind the Country Chic Cottage. So I get questions every single day about heat press and easy press settings. So the time and the temperature that you need to press various surfaces as well as materials. So I thought I'd make a video today to teach you how to find those press temperatures all by yourself. So I'm going to talk about finding press temperatures for both HTV as well as sublimation, both in this video. So first of all, let's talk about HTV. HTV is heat transfer vinyl or iron-on, and it's a material that when heated makes an adhesive that sticks to something like a shirt. Now, how do you find the correct time and temperature for your HTV? So HTV products can vary widely from brand to brand. Like I have some brands that press at a really low temperature for only 4 seconds. Other brands that press at a higher temperature for 30 seconds. So that means it depends on the brand of your HTV first. Second, it depends on what you're pressing it on to. So what I recommend is to go to the website for the manufacturer of the HTV you're using. If you're using Cricut Iron-On, they have a super handy heat guide, and I'll link to that below, where you can put your material that you're pressing on, what type of iron-on you're using, if you're using an easy press or not, and it just comes out with a time and a temperature for you to press at. For other brands, you basically need to look at either the website for the manufacturer or the website where you purchased it is often a really good source. So let's say I purchased some HTV from Heat Transfer Warehouse. You can usually find instructions right on the listing where you purchased it as far as what time and temperature. Now for HTV, time and temperature are not the only things you need to worry about. So there are a couple other things that you may want to take into consideration. Some HTV products will also have a pressure, which is how hard you push down if you use your easy press, or what you set your heat press to if you're using a full-size heat press. But the other thing I want you to always note is the peel temperature. So some HTVs you remove the carrier sheet hot, and others you remove it cold, and some might say cool, like there's warm, there's various temperatures where you need to peel the carrier sheet back. And I often find that people make this mistake because for Cricut Iron-On, for example, it's a cold peel. So you need to wait for it to completely cool down before you peel that carrier sheet back. For Cricut in particular, you also need to press from the front and the back. So that means basically you're doing it wrong. If you just came up with a generic time and temperature from a website for HTV, then you're applying it incorrectly to begin with, and then you're not waiting for it to cool, most likely, before you peel that carrier sheet back. So a lot of people have trouble with products like HTV from just simply not following the instructions. So always follow the instructions for the manufacturer of the HTV, and oftentimes they'll tell you different times and temperatures depending on what you're pressing on. So cotton might be one set of settings, polyester might be another set, like you can put HTV on paper. Some manufacturers have instructions for paper, so it just depends on what you're putting it on as well. Now, if you are going to put it on a really odd surface, so if I'm going to put it on wood or something like that, I start with the lowest recommended temperature as well as time. Then I increase from there. That is because I'm basically doing an experiment at that point if they don't have that particular material called out. So I just kind of experiment with the lowest time and temperature, work my way up from there. And if this is a project like I know that I want to do this project over and over again, maybe in different variations, I would probably take some notes on that so that I know in the future what settings that I used and which were successful. So that's the basics of finding your heat press temperatures for HTV. What about sublimation? So sublimation does require usually a higher heat point. It also might require more time depending on the surface you're using, and there definitely will be a pressure recommendation that you really want to pay attention to because that can make a huge difference in your results. So how do you get a starting point for sublimation? What I recommend for sublimation, very first thing I recommend, look on the blank you're using. So the website you purchased that tumbler from, where you purchased those coasters, the Amazon listing for the sublimation puzzle you purchased. Most of the time they have instructions right on the listing with time, temperature, pressure, all called out. So that's where I recommend that you start. Now, few things that might alter what the recommendations are. The first thing is if the instructions, like say you're gonna sublimate on a tumbler and the instructions are for a tumbler press, but you are gonna do your tumbler in a convection oven. You might not find actual instructions for that convection oven. So that's where a little bit of experimentation comes in. So I always recommend if you are going to sublimate on a blank for the first time, don't just purchase one. Be sure to purchase a few because you might ruin your first one doing some experiments. So how do you experiment and know if you're getting the right sublimation coating? So the optimal way to do that, if you can spare one of the blanks, the optimal way to do that would be to cut black strips of your sublimation. So whatever sublimation printer you're using, print like solid black, cut strips off of that, put the strips around the tumbler, and then try those in your oven. If it comes out a true black, then you're good to go. If it comes out looking green, you've under-baked it, and you need to increase either the time or the temperature. If it comes out looking brown, you've over-baked it, and you need to look at decreasing one of those things. The other thing, when you're talking about ovens, however, would be consistency. Ovens and heat presses, really. So you want a consistent heat across the entire blank. So you may find that some spots get overcooked or undercooked, while other spots look really great. So that is a function of either your convection oven not heating all the same in all the same spots, or your heat press, the platen itself, not getting the same temperature in all the same spots. So one thing to do with a convection oven is to rotate the blank occasionally, and you may find you need to do that. Again, I find what works for me. Try to take notes, especially if I'm going to use that blank again in my craft projects. That way I know in the future where to start when making those blanks. And sometimes it's useful, like a 20-ounce tumbler from one manufacturer might have slightly different instructions or times and temperatures than one from another manufacturer, but the first set of instructions or the first settings that worked for me usually is a great starting point for that second batch of tumblers, even if they're from another manufacturer. So do think about what I said there, however. Even if you are sublimating a 20-ounce tumbler, one manufacturer's instructions might be different from another manufacturer's instructions. So always check the listing for what you purchased, see what their instructions are for time, temperature, especially pressure. Make sure you're doing all those correctly. Now for sublimation, I also want you to read those instructions for other things that you might need. Like certain glass sublimation blanks require a Nomex pad or a rubber pad over the top. You need to make sure that you have all those accessories as well so you can be successful. So don't just think that the metal ornament that you're sublimating will be the same time, temperature, and pressure and all of these same settings as a glass ornament or a ceramic ornament. Each of those are going to be different because they're different materials and require a little bit different procedure in order to sublimate on them. So always check the manufacturer's instructions. Now when we're talking about sublimation, infusible ink is a form of sublimation. It's just a simpler form for those that don't have a sublimation printer. However, I do recommend heading first to the Cricut Heat Guide, putting in infusible ink, picking a surface that's like what you're pressing on. So they only have like coasters, they might have mugs now, they have shirts, wine bags. They only have like a small selection of blanks on that heat guide, but I pick what is closest to what I want to put infusible ink on, and then I start with those settings, if that makes sense. So infusible ink does have a different group of settings than sublimation. So I always go to the Cricut Heat Guide for infusible ink, regardless of what I'm putting it on, and try to find settings that I think will work. Now, when we're talking about sublimation, mugs, tumblers, if you have the Cricut mug press, the time and the temperature are already set, as well as the pressure. So there's not a whole lot you can do to change that. Cricut did release like a small set of instructions, and I'll link to those below, where you can turn it, I think, down and maybe up a little bit. I haven't even messed with that. I leave it at whatever time and temperature that it is set at when it got to me from the manufacturer. And I have done tons of different mugs and tumblers, and it's been fine. So basically that machine works. It senses the temperature and the time that it is at that temperature, and then it basically is finished when it reaches a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, and it dings, you lift the handle and you remove the mug or the tumbler. So for me, that's like super easy. So if the blank will fit in the mug press, so if my mug or my tumbler will fit in the mug press, I usually go ahead and use the mug press because I don't have to worry about finding that time and temperature. So that's like one of the main benefits of the mug press for me, is that it is so darn simple and I don't have to go digging around for a time and temperature. And I've had huge success with the mug press and using a variety of sublimation and infusible ink designs. So I will link to a few videos in the description below where I use the mug press for a variety of options. Plus I'll link to some other videos about sublimation, convection oven, so you can watch me sort of hone in on a convection oven with time and temperature. So you might get an idea of what you need to do. So hopefully this helps you find a time and temperature for whatever you're pressing, whether that be HTV or sublimation. So it's not a solid answer where I can just tell you exactly a temperature and time for everything you're gonna press. It just really does not work that way. It depends on the blank you're using, and I would definitely go with those manufacturer's instructions. Like, they have done all the work for you as far as finding the optimum time and temperature. Start there. You may find that it might not work for you, but hopefully the time and temperature set by the manufacturer works for you, and then you can just, your first one is a success and you just keep on crafting from there. I generally find that the blanks I use, I can just use their instructions and have zero problems right from the start. The only difference that I find is if I want to use a convection oven and they don't have instructions for an oven, they only have instructions for a press. So it's like the only time I kind of struggle. Otherwise, I find that the press instructions are spot on just about every time, and I am sublimating away within minutes. So hopefully that helps you answer those heat press questions. If you have more questions about setting time and temperature for a variety of blanks or surfaces, please ask those in the comment section below. If this video helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We have videos like this every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank y'all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.